On the issue of housing,
I need to just add to that. I need to just say something by way of clarification.
Yes.
Because he mentioned the issue of Singapore. Now, I think it's important we must get to get the point correct. In the case of Singapore, there is actually a policy that every employee of government must set aside a portion of his income is taken, an investment in what they call their Housing Development Board, HDB. That's the agency of government that builds those houses. In other words, it's like a quasi-government body that delivers on this housing. Now, in the case of Nigeria, in the years past, we had this National Housing Fund decree that came into operation. What the government ought to have done is part of some of these problems of discontinuities in government programs. What the government ought to have done was to build on that policy to ensure that the pool of funds is grown to such an extent that government does not need to go into the. He was right. Why would the Federal Ministry of Housing be building houses? I ask myself, in the first place, federal government does not have land anywhere in this country. The land belongs to the state government under the law. So why would the federal government start we saw the example in Shagari era when somebody went and built a housing complex in one bush somewhere. They don't need it. It's the state government that can better do these things. But not even necessarily directly through the first thing to do is to pull the funds together, reduce the cost of borrowing, and the nature of that the housing fund is such that because it's drawn from the savings, it can help moderate the cost of borrowing, and then you now develop the capacity to deliver on these houses so that young people who have worked for 10 years will access these loans. There's no magic to it. What the government is doing is simply playing politics with it. Every year, 1 million.
Okay, we've got to wrap up very quickly. Let's ask Ebon, what's your thought on the housing issue?
It's very simple. For you to be a landlord, you must have land. In Nigeria currently, the government, both federal and state and local, have grabbed 90% of the land terrain of this country through the Land Use Act of 1978. For you to acquire any interest in any land, you must contend with the governor, you must contend with the local government chairman, you must contend with the president to grant you certificate of occupancy or consent. So when the cost of acquiring the land is so high, the people who want to develop the housing will have to take it so high that it gets out of the ordinary people. Government should release land to the people. Land belongs to the people. Our parents, our ancestors, they own this land, they develop and divide it. There's no reason why just suddenly Obasanjo woke up in 1978 and took over land from the people who own it. So the first stage is to remove the Land Use Act from the Constitution and then take it back and give it to the indigenous owners. Acquisition then becomes easy. Then reduce the cost of acquisition of building materials, and then housing will be available for everybody. Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to say, which is important, Dr. Jonathan is not spending 1 year. He was a deputy governor in Bayelsa State. He was a vice president in Nigeria. It's not enough. No, it's not a laughing matter. Because I don't want my colleague to mislead Nigerians. Dr. Jonathan is not 1 year in office. He has been in government since Bayelsa. So he knows if there's anybody to take Nigeria to the next level, he's the person to do it. And he should do it now.
Okay, Oronto, it's going to be your turn now. Let's hear from you.
Your final words.
Your words,
we have to close now.
I agree with Tolu that if there's anybody who is going to take Nigeria to the next level, it is Dr. Jonathan. And we have to give him all the support to enable Dr. Jonathan take Nigeria to the next level. But for him to do that, there has to be three key things. We have to ensure that together we stand for Nigeria and with Nigeria to engender our unity, live in peace, support the reforms, the transformation agenda, which is backed through the reform program that are ongoing, so that the areas of education, aviation, health, power, road infrastructure can be achieved. I believe that Nigerians will be happier if there is peace and justice in the society, and we are moving to deliver on the promises that Dr. Jonathan made. We must not forget, the president said, this is a decade of development. The debate must be about development. It should be a debate of justice and equity. And I'm happy that we seem to all be discussing and agreeing that that is an imperative.
Okay, just before you go, Oronto, I was trying to find out what's the milestone for the 1 million homes that the Minister of Housing has promised. What's the milestone for making that happen? By the end of this year, how many of those homes will be expected to be built? by the end of next year. Do we expect that to happen?
The policy is just coming out now, and this is the 9th month of the year. So we are going to look at from this September to the next September, and then you'll be able to find out whether that 1 million had been achieved. But we must not forget one thing and one word. That word is partnership. Partnership. The federal government can't do it alone. It has to collaborate with institutions, with the banks, state government, local government. And we must not forget, and Olu is right about the ownership of land. The ownership of land is owned, and the Land Use Act is very clear that state government, the state governor has powers over land. So it has to be partnership between the federal, state, and local government.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, we need to wrap up in the studio now. So I want, in a nutshell, let's hear your scorecard for GEJ. Let me begin with you, sir.
There's no scorecard beyond what the average Nigerian has spoken.
In a nutshell.
I do not believe that we are on the right track. I think that there are a lot of issues that Nigerians need to sit down and address, because we really need to release the energy of Nigerians to work. The truth of the matter is that Nigerians are not working. And why are we not working? It's because the structure is so unproductive. The structure is so unwieldy as to encumber the capacity of Nigerians to actually work. You wake up in the morning, there are so many issues you have to contend with. There are institutions that are simply not there. They are just not there to service the system. So you ask yourself, today, Nigerians are not productive. We spend so much energy, there's so much effort without productivity. I think we need to address that.
This particular government has no policy, it has no initiative, there's no idea. When the president was under President Yaradua, he had an eight-point agenda. Now, in this country, security of life and property, which is the most important, is so terrible that people can just wake up one day and hear that a bomb has exploded. There's insecurity, Boko Haram. There is militancy in the Niger Delta. There is kidnapping in the southeast. There is armed robbery in the southwest. Life itself is not guaranteed. So there is nothing this government can achieve if it cannot address the issue of insurgents, the issue of dissatisfaction of the major groups in this country. Everybody is clamoring for transformation in terms of real federalism, so that you allow power to devolve on the federating units. And then secondly is the issue of corruption. Most of the people who are benefiting from the oil subsidies scam are members of the National Economic Summit Group who are sponsoring the presidential campaign, governorship campaigns, and they are every day going to Aso Rock, and we know them, and they have been giving awards every day. So the government must take a decision to be able to, as a matter of urgency, spend the commonwealth of our money to better the lives of the ordinary Nigerian.
Okay.
Mr. Additional.
Thank you. I would like to see a president that is a doer, not just a talker. I know that government has to plan, but if you spend all the time planning and saying, we will do this, we will do this, we will do, when are you going to do it? Government does not last forever. It's a timed thing. So you need to ensure that within a specific period, you are able to achieve specific things. I'll say something very briefly. In 1999, before the military left, I prefer democracy any day, but in 1999, I was on leave. I took my car, I drove from Lagos to Akwa Ibom on a holiday. I spent about a week, I came back, I drove back to Lagos. I can't do that today. One, my car will likely break apart on the road. Two, I'll likely get mugged somewhere along the line.
Or kidnapped.
So it shows you where the country is.
Okay.
Okay.